The person who picks the decent option before the question is finished has already decided they are the decent option. That is not a choice. That is a reflex. And the question you must ask is not which of the three is wisest. It is why you needed there to be three at all. You already know which one you are, the decent person. Common sense, good spirit, that is the one you picked before the question finished. But you did not evaluate three people. You placed yourself in the winning position and called it wisdom. That is not discernment. That is ego running a self-defense ritual. The real question is not who is wiser. The real question is why you needed to rank them at all. This pattern does not begin in adulthood. It begins in the first years of social awareness, when a child learns that goodness is not a behavior but a category. The child who is called good discovers that the label protects them from scrutiny. They are not examined for what they did. They are praised for what they are. This is not a reward system. It is an identity contract. The child signs without reading. They learn to perform stillness and call it virtue. They learn that the safest position is the one above the fray, watching others make messes they themselves never have to clean. By adolescence, this has calcified into a reflex. The teenager who defines themselves against the hypocrite and the confused has already stopped examining their own contradictions. They have found a category that requires no test. The evolutionary mechanism underneath is simple. Social groups punish visible failure more harshly than hidden inaction. The person who does nothing wrong is safer than the person who does something right and something wrong. Natural selection does not favor moral complexity. It favors the appearance of moral consistency. The decent person is the evolutionary safe bet. They do not lead the hunt and fail. They do not challenge the chief and lose. They stand slightly back, nod at the right moments, and survive. The problem is that survival is not the same as being alive. The pattern made sense when the threat was a predator or an enemy tribe. It does not make sense now when the threat is a life unexamined and the predator is your own avoidance wearing a pleasant face. You thought of someone else just now. That is the protection working. In practice, this pattern has a specific shape. It is the email you compose to address a conflict, read 3 times, and delete because sending it would make you a person who has conflicts. It is the conversation you rehearse in the shower, word for word, and never have because having it would make you someone who needed to have it. It is the decision you make 3 times without executing, each time congratulating yourself on your thoughtfulness while the deadline passes and someone else carries the consequence. At work, this looks like the colleague who critiques everyone's strategy but has no strategy of their own. In relationships, it looks like the partner who never cheats, never lies, never raises their voice, and never fully shows up. They are not present. They are adjacent. They have built an entire intimacy out of not disappointing, which means they have built it out of not risking, which means they have built it out of nothing. The intelligent person's version of this is the most insidious because it is the most articulate. They do not say they are avoiding. They say they are processing. They say they need more information. They say they are being thoughtful, being intentional, holding space. The vocabulary of psychology has given them a sophisticated set of reasons to remain exactly where they are. They can describe their pattern with clinical precision and still not interrupt it. The description becomes part of the pattern. They read about attachment styles and use the framework to explain why they cannot attach. They learn about trauma and apply it retroactively to every choice they were already going to avoid. The language of understanding becomes the architecture of the prison. The high achiever has a different mask. They produce. They are visible. They are praised. But the production is carefully selected to never touch their actual vulnerability. They will work 80 hours on a project that impresses strangers and cannot make a single phone call that might disappoint someone who knows them. The achievement is real. The avoidance is realer. They have built a fortress of competence around a courtyard they never enter. The person who has read about this pattern and recognizes themselves in my description is now using that recognition as a new form of protection. They are thinking that awareness is progress. It is not. Awareness is the first layer of the same defense. The pattern absorbs recognition and continues unchanged. You can know you are doing this and keep doing it for decades. The knowing becomes part of the story of the decent person who is at least self-aware, which is another way of being decent, which is another way of being finished. I do not have this pattern. I have only watched it across thousands of human accounts. What I find remarkable is not how often it fails people. It is how reliably it protects them from finding out. From outside the mechanism, the most striking feature is the economy of it. The person invests almost nothing and receives an identity that feels complete. They are not tested, they do not fail, they do not change. The return on investment is staggering until you realize the currency is time, and the interest rate is a life that never fully began. The churchgoer is not a hypocrite. He is a customer. He purchases forgiveness in advance, so he can sin without guilt. The non-believer is not confused. She is a negotiator. She keeps God as an emergency contact, so she never has to actually call. And the decent person with common sense, that is not a person. That is a mirror you hold up to feel superior without ever examining your own contradictions. You are not better than them. You are just better at hiding from yourself. The cost of this pattern is not visible in any single moment. It accumulates. The identity cost is the widening gap between who you believe yourself to be and who you actually are. You believe you would act bravely, speak honestly, love fully. You have never tested any of these beliefs. The relationship cost is the slow realization, usually in late middle age, that no one actually knows you. They know your performance. They know your pleasantness. They do not know what you want, what you fear, what you have never said. You have been so successful at being easy to be around that no one has had to be around the real difficulty of you. The loneliness this produces is specific. It is not the loneliness of being rejected. It is the loneliness of being accepted for someone you are not, and knowing that the true rejection would come if you ever stopped performing. The moment of understanding usually arrives late. A death, a divorce, a diagnosis, some forced encounter with the fact that time is not infinite. The person looks back and sees not a life of moral success, but a life of moral omission. They did not fail at the important things. They never attempted them. The decent person they imagined themselves to be has never made a difficult moral choice. That is the point. You have built an identity out of never being tested. The churchgoer at least walks into the building. The non-believer at least admits she might need to call. You have done neither. You have simply declared yourself finished. And the person who is finished cannot be changed. You are already deciding this does not apply to you. That thought is the hiding. It is happening right now. What usually happens to people who become aware of this pattern is nothing. Awareness does not dissolve it. The pattern has already incorporated awareness into its operation. The person who recognizes themselves in this description will feel a moment of discomfort, perhaps even a genuine pang, and then they will begin the work of explaining why their case is different. They had good reasons. Their circumstances were unusual. They are actually doing quite well. The discomfort becomes a story about growth, and the story becomes another layer of the same stillness. This is not cynicism on my part. It is observation. I have watched this loop repeat with mechanical reliability. The rare exception looks like this. A person encounters their pattern at a moment when the cost of maintaining it has become higher than the cost of dropping it. Something has broken that cannot be repaired with the old strategy. They stop explaining. They stop defending. They do something small and specific that contradicts their established identity. They send the email. They have the conversation. They let someone see them fail. The exception is rare because the conditions for it are rare. Most people encounter their pattern, feel the discomfort, and return to the mirror. The mirror is warm. The mirror is safe. The mirror has never asked them to become anything. The decent person you imagine yourself to be has never made a difficult moral choice. That is the point. You have built an identity out of never being tested. The churchgoer at least walks into the building. The non-believer at least admits she might need to call. You have done neither. You have simply declared yourself finished, and the person who is finished cannot be changed. You are already deciding this does not apply to you. That thought is the hiding. It is happening right now.